And welcome to the PROACT Approach to Patient Safety. This is an overview for new team members who will be participating on either failure modes and effects analysis teams, opportunity analysis teams, or root cause analysis teams. My name is Bob Latino, and I'm going to be your host and guide for the next few minutes. I appreciate your time. So let's get started. Your facility has asked for this type of presentation as a prerequisite to participating on these types of teams, because what you might be experiencing is a little different than what you might have experienced in the past. What we've seen in the past is when new team members come into such teams, they come with a certain expectations, and sometimes they're not always pleasant. For instance, some people foresee these as unproductive meetings. It's a waste of their time. They dread having to go to these type of meetings because it's the same thing over and over again. There's typically no agenda. It's just people brainstorming, and usually the weight in the room will win whatever the argument is. There would be concerns about admitting a mistake and how open we can be without fear of retribution. There may be a fear of blame, that if I am honest, will someone try to blame me for it? And of not being heard, that no one's really listening. They have foregone conclusions, and they just need a quorum in the room, and no one's going to really listen to me. They're not really wanting to hear the truth. They want it to fit what they want it to be. Well, we want to contrast that to what your facility has adopted as their form of root cause analysis, FMEA, and opportunity analysis. What you should expect in these sessions is a very disciplined, step-by-step approach to conducting the failure modes and effects analysis, the opportunity analysis, and the root cause analysis, as opposed to being a disconnected session, which I often refer to as a Velcro dart approach to root cause analysis. You should also encounter a genuine desire to uncover the truth in order to prevent recurrence of the undesirable outcome. That will be the overriding focus of the team leader, is to uncover what actually happened in this event, whether it's the good, the bad, or the ugly. You can expect a transparent and open forum to express your opinions related to the events at hand, so that we're not in fear that if I'm being honest, that someone's not going to try to, to discipline me or to be degrading to me. And also, there's going to be a willingness to allow others to learn from what the team found during the analysis. After all, this is the greatest benefit you will get from these types of analyses, is others learning from the experience of what this team has found in an effort to prevent these from happening again. And contrary to popular belief, the focus of this type of session will not be strictly on regulatory compliance. The focus will be solely on patient safety, so that the outcomes of this analysis will be directly correlated to the effect on the patient, and as a result of that focus, regulatory compliance will be merely a byproduct. How is RCA typically done? Well, hopefully this is a picture of the past where we're using the Post-its and the easel pads to depict some essence of cause and effect, because usually some poor soul is going to have to go back to their office and input this into some type of program like PowerPoint to be able to present it to someone else. And hopefully there's not a good air conditioning system in this room, because once those Post-its go, it's very difficult to put the pieces of the puzzle back together. In this overview presentation, we're going to go over the differences in the methodology versus the software, because the software is strictly related to the rules of the methodology. Software should not be seen as a panacea, where it has all the answers. I kind of liken this to Microsoft Word. If you don't know English, it doesn't really help you construct a sentence. Same with the PROACT software. If you don't understand the basics of how to investigate an accident or an incident, or to understand the high level of risk in a certain process, if you don't understand the basics of the steps, then the software is not going to really help you. Okay, so let's step through the methodology first. Let's get familiar with a few terms that you'll be hearing during these team meetings. LEAP is one module within the PROACT software. It contains two different methodologies: the basic failure modes and effects analysis, and a new term, likely new term, which is called opportunity analysis. The thing you should remember from both of these is that they both analyze systems as opposed to individual events. And I'll be going over in detail how they work. As a result of looking at a system with these two tools, we will uncover what we refer to as the significant few. This is a Pareto cut of these systems, which will identify the 20% of the types of events that are causing 80% or more of your risk through the basic FMEA, or 80% of your physical losses, which is in the opportunity analysis. In either case, what these two tools are doing is identifying candidates for root cause analysis. So out of these two processes within the LEAP module, we will identify qualified candidates for root cause analysis. These will be individual events that will transfer from the LEAP module into the PROACT module. Now, PROACT root cause analysis module is related to now taking a microscope and putting it on the one singular event. Just like a police detective at a crime scene, what they're doing is they're investigating individual events. The combination of these two tools will result in cost-effective patient safety. So let's take a little tour of the LEAP module. Now, what is the difference between basic FMEA and opportunity analysis? The key you want to take away from this and what you will experience in your teams is that FMEA, by its original design, is a probabilistic tool. It's a risk tool. It's looking at things that might happen, as opposed to opportunity analysis, which is now looking at a given system, an existing system, and looking backwards as to things that have happened within that system. For the sake of example in this overview, I'm going to take a sample definition of loss, which is any event or condition resulting in an ADE. And now I'm going to apply that definition to the two tools of FMEA and OA. As I stated earlier, the fundamental difference is that the basic FMEA is probabilistic. It's looking at tomorrow. It is a risk and a safety tool. The spreadsheet for a basic FMEA might look something like this. We look at a system as a whole, and then we break it down into subsystems or items within that overall system. We look at a failure mode that could occur within that system, what its effect would be on other items in that system, and then its effect on the overall system. The measure of risk is quantified by severity and probability. We would measure the severity times the probability to come up with a criticality. Now, this is a very difficult task because these things have not happened. So there is a great deal of subjectivity in doing a basic FMEA because we will have to base it on our past experience with such related types of systems. There is also some advocates of the use of another column, which would be detectability. Detectability is how likely would we be able to detect these types of events occurring with the systems that we have in place, and that would also be multiplied by severity times the probability. We do not include it as a default, that there is an option to use it because not everyone chooses to use that particular column. But what we have to take into consideration here is that we are looking at things that could go wrong. Now, the VA, the National Center for Patient Safety, has certain classifications that are put out as defaults. Now, not everyone chooses to use these, and as you'll see in the software, your organization may have adopted their own value tables for these severities and probabilities. This is just a sampling of what one source is from the National Center for Patient Safety. It is very important that these be identified prior to your session because this will, first of all, negate the debate that would have to go on to come to consensus, but that they be consistent for the use within your organization. And here are the like ones for the probability ratings. A couple of sample uses of the failure modes and effects analysis. Obviously, one of the primary ones is the regulatory driver by JACO of completing one once a year for a high-risk process. We have used these. One novel one that comes to mind for me was a particular hospital was doubling the size of their emergency room, and during the 11-month construction period they had to change the location of their triage entrance. And this was at a drastically different place than it was initially, where everybody knew it where it was. So on their interim plan, they had to look for things that could go wrong with their new plan. So they applied the FMEA analysis to this and found out all the risks associated with moving that triage entrance to a different location. It was a very successful analysis. Okay, now let's look at an opportunity analysis. This is the historical side. There's two representative tables in here. If you look at the top and you look at the bottom, the top is associated with, we all know that if we report outside of the hospital, we are not going to convey any type of financial data. So for the purposes of like JACO reporting, our spreadsheet might look something like this. We're breaking down a system into its subs. We have events that have occurred within that process that have met our definition, and the mode is representative of how that event has surfaced in the past. The frequency, usually over a period of time like a year, will identify how often it has happened, and in this case we're going to use a weighting table instead of dollars. We're going to say on a scale of 1 to 10 what has been the average severity when these types of errors occur. So we would have frequency times severity will give us a weighted rank. Now when we're reporting inside the hospital, we may be able to now make use of the financials. The spreadsheet column headings apply the same. We're going to say here that in the subsystem where the doctor writes the order, we have had an ADE as a result of prescribing errors. In the past year, when we go and review our records, we find out that we've had 130 of them, and the aggregate indirect and direct costs have been on average about $3,640. So now I'm going to multiply the frequency times the impact, and I'm going to get a total annual loss. Now this is a direct correlation to the budget. These are real dollars, and they are eating up the people's lunch whose budgets these are coming out of. So this gives us a very good look at stepping back of the big picture over a year's time and assessing the distribution of costs throughout the system that we're analyzing. Examples of this, of applying opportunity analysis to a system, is that we were looking at one hospital. It was a 225-bed acute care facility. We were looking at the blood drawing system in their ER, and using this particular tool we found that they were redrawing blood over 10,000 times a year. When we collected to the data associated with how much the average redraw was, we found that it was on average about $300. This takes into account the syringe, the gauze, the tech time, the lab time, the real estate in the ER, $300 a piece. Now, there's not a whole lot of rocket science involved to multiply 10,000 times $300 and to realize that that's $3 million a year that is being lost, and likely no one is questioning that loss. How many of us question the fact that we went in and did a redraw? So this highlights the chronic things that happen all the time that don't rise to the level of a sentinel event, but in the long run increase the risk of a sentinel event, because the chronic failures are usually the precursors to the sentinel events. Okay, whether using the FMEA or the OA, you're going to end up with a spreadsheet that's populated with the data, and we're going to take the total rank, whether we're using risk or whether we're using dollars, and we're going to multiply that column total by 80%. Then what we're going to do is rank the individual events, the rows, from highest to lowest, and find out how many of these events did it take to equal or greater that 80% of the dollars or risk. And then we will identify these significant few events that I talked about earlier. What we've done now is we've prioritized the importance of events within a system based on some criteria, whether it's risk or whether it's dollars. We have now quantified who are the ideal candidates for root cause analysis. Okay, now let's jump over into the RCA approach. If you remember, I said that the FMEA and the OA were going to identify systems in which had significant events within them that we would put under the microscope using the PROACT RCA approach. Now, PROACT is an acronym. It's an acronym for a basic investigative methodology. And if you look at any investigative occupation, they will follow these steps. Think of your favorite crime show and follow these steps as well. Preserving event data. What are the first things that detectives do at the crime scene? They rope off the area and they preserve the event data. Then we have to order the analysis team. We have to ensure that our team is unbiased and that we have a cross-function of people on the teams. Okay, next what we have to do is we have to analyze this particular event with that team using the data or the evidence that we've collected. And analyzing it means that we have to put it into some type of cause and effect relationship to be able to roll out the failure backwards from the point or the facts that had happened that we know of. Using the evidence, we'll go backwards in time and say, well, how could this have happened? We will come up with hypotheses. We will use our data we collected to prove or disprove it. Eventually, we're going to identify things that we call physical, human, and latent root causes. Then we're going to go into identifying, now that we know our causes, we're going to have to identify and develop some recommendations. We know what went wrong, now we have to develop recommendations to do something about it. And oftentimes, we see in our investigations, is that a lot of times the ball falls off the cliff right here. We have a bunch of well-intentioned people, we have developed our recommendations, they may have even gotten to approval levels. But then, because they're not assigned as to anyone who's accountable, they kind of go off into the abyss, and we never are able to follow up on them, and the tracking and the monitoring just goes off the cliff. But our intent with this approach is to be able to make people accountable by assigning them the tasks for the implementing the recommendations and a date for them to be done by. Just because we are good-willed and we intend on doing things, we still have to backtrack with ourselves and monitor ourselves through tracking. We have to look and monitor over a period of time to say, did something get better as a result of us implementing these? Because that'll be the true measure of success, is that something got better for what we did. Okay, the tool that we use and that you will use in these teams is called a logic tree. If you can envision this tree, it would have a timeline beside it where the event itself would be the end of the line of that timeline, and that would be what did occur. The failure modes would also be facts that describe the event that did occur. Now, we may not know why these modes are occurring, and that's why we have to become hypothetical. We say, how could the previous mode have occurred? We will use our team members' experience, and they will give us hypotheses as to how those possibilities could happen. Then, with the data that we collected, the evidence that we collected, we will prove what did and what did not happen. It's a reiterative process. Your leader, your facilitator, your principal analyst will continually ask you the question, how could this occur? And then you will come up and give them possibilities, and then the evidence will dictate where this drill down is going, not any single person on the team. As this reiterative process continues, we will drill down and uncover what we call the physical, the human, and the latent root causes. I want to plant a seed in your head that your facilitator will also work with you, is that if you consider this black line on this screen as a timeline. Now, when we do root cause analyses, do we do them actually on the incident itself, or what actually triggers the root cause analysis to be commissioned? I want to put in your head a little seed that says, do we do root cause analysis on the incident, or do we do root cause analysis on the consequences? Now think about it in situations you've been involved in, is that what triggers a root cause to be done? And I think that you'll come to the conclusion that oftentimes it's because there has been either an unnecessary or an unacceptable risk, or that there have been some negative consequences. And what I want you to realize and take into consideration is that because this is a timeline, there is usually a gap in time between the incident itself and the point in time when we have the consequences isolated. This represents our response time. Did the response to the accident or the incident make the consequences worse? We have to take this into consideration, because unless we look at our events and our modes this way, then we will not take into consideration that we could have had an improper response that made things worse. So in this case, the event at the top of our tree, if you remember that red box, is it the actual incident itself, or is it the consequence? And if it is the consequence, then we may want to put a block in at the mode level that says improper response, because that will force us to look at how we responded to that incident. If we only started with the top box, that red box, as at the incident, we would not pick up the opportunity to look at the response aspects. Just food for thought. Okay, let's look at those cause things that I was talking about. The different levels of cause. They come in the form of physical causes. These are the component causes. And as I tell a lot of people that I train, this is like the copy guy that comes to fix our copier. He doesn't really understand what's wrong with the copier. He just keeps changing out parts and hopes that it goes away. Unfortunately, life's not that easy. If we stop at physical levels, we're only doing problem solving. We're not doing root cause analysis, because beneath these physical causes is always going to be errors of omission or commission by the human being, the decision errors, and they're going to happen because we are human. However, if we stop and blame people for making bad decisions, and we're playing that blame game, then that's simply witch hunting. And you may be successful with your root cause one time, but if you use this tool to witch hunt, then you will likely not do root cause again, because no one's going to help you. That's not the purpose of root cause analysis. If we're doing real root cause analysis, and that's what your leaders will be teaching you in this process, is that we are not interested necessarily in who made a bad decision. We are interested in why they thought it was the right decision at the time that they made the decision. And this is referred to as the latent root causes, or the systemic deficiencies. These are our systems, our organizational systems, our policies, our procedures, our purchasing habits, our training habits. These are the systems that are put in place to help people make better decisions. When we get to that level of drill down and understanding why people make bad decisions, then we will be doing RCA. If you ever follow the Dr. James Reasons out of the University of Manchester in England, he's one of the leading scientists in the area of human error. He uses the terms intent, actions, and consequences. We make decisions off of good intent. As a result of that good intent, we take an action or an inaction. As a result of that action or inaction, we trigger a series of physical consequences to occur. Now, these are completely synonymous with physical, human, and latent root causes. As we're going through the body of the tree, and your principal analyst will lead you down this path, we are first asking the question, how could something happen? And that's a vastly different question than why did something happen. When I'm asking how can, I'm looking for all the possibilities. Think of the criminology aspect that I was talking about. Is if I ask how could a murder occur as to why did the murder occur, they're two very different questions with two very different sets of answers. When we ask how could, we are looking at the forensic side or the physical side of failure. When I'm looking at the whys, we are looking at the human side. We are looking at why humans decided to do or not do something. Your principal analyst will likely get into, at the human level, the understanding of why people do the things that they do, because they've had education in human factors engineering and human error principles. These are just a few of the things that they will bring up in searching for understanding why people thought it was the right thing to do. Dr. Reasons has coined the term the Swiss cheese model, which many of you are likely to be familiar with. Each of these slices of cheese represents a defense mechanism or a barrier that we have in place. And as we know, all of these are not fail-safe. They're not, for lack of a better term, they're not all American pieces of cheese. They're Swiss cheese. So they have barrier, they have holes, they have breaches. And what we try to do with our systems is ensure that none of these holes are able to line up on the same day in the same location. When they do, that's when we're at risk for these things to bite us. Okay, we're all familiar to a degree with troubleshooting, brainstorming, problem solving, and disciplined RCA. The point I want to get across with this is that this may be a different technique than you've used in the past. In the past, if we're not using evidence to back up what we say, it tends to go much faster in these types of analyses because we don't have to spend the time to collect the data. However, whenever we expense time in these types of analyses, we're taking shortcuts on evidence, and therefore we're taking shortcuts on the accuracy of our investigation. So we should just realize that. And again, if we look at the software aspects of this, the software, it's an efficiency tool. It's a tool that will help you organize and administer the data within the analysis so that it is easier to document and it is easier to communicate with others. Therefore, it's from an efficiency standpoint, it's more time effective. Okay, now that's a basic overview of the methodologies themselves that your principal analyst will be going over with you in these various types of teams. From the standpoint of support from Reliability Center Incorporated, should you have any questions that your principal analyst cannot answer for you, please feel free to contact at 458-0645. If you have any software-related questions, you should first contact your PROACT administrator in your IT group, or if they have issues with that, they know that they can contact Roger Bellevue at 804-458-0645. And his email address is rbellevue@reliability.com. Okay, I've taken you through the methodology side. Now what I'm going to do is quickly give you a glance of what you can expect to see when you go to these sessions using the software. Okay, you'll see in the yellow area off here to the left, you see the modules that we talked about, LEAP, and then you see PROACT RCA. What your facilitators are going to do, I will bring up a sample FMEA, is that they're going to have you assist with constructing, or it may be done prior to your getting in there, the particular system that's going to be analyzed. In this case, it's a newly proposed system, and it's an ultrasound review process. These are the subsystems, each of these blocks within the overall system. Now the other button here is primarily where you're going to be able to spend most of your time as the team in filling in the blanks now associated with this particular analysis. Your principal analyst will have a definition of a loss for this process. They will go through each block within this process flow diagram, and they will say, what about this block? Can we have unacceptable delays? Now this is where your experience and the reason that they have you on the team is that you possess this type of knowledge, and they require you, they need you to be able to accurately fill this out. So you will provide them the events that could cause these delays. They will be reflected in the modes you provide them, and then they will ask you for the probabilities numbers and the severity numbers based on those value tables that we talked about earlier. So as you can see, when you get into these sessions, the process flow diagram will be ready and the definition of loss will be ready. When you have exhausted all of the subsystems in here, you will now be able to click on this button that says Significant Few, and it will highlight the 20% or less of the events that represent 80% or more of your particular risk. And when I click on this Significant Few Chart button, what it's going to do is merely display the data in a bar chart format, and this is for compliance purposes as well, but this is what JACO is looking for, is a quantitative prioritization of risk. So now I can look in an overview format of where my greatest risks are and whether I want to do something about it or not. I can click on any one of these events, and if I wanted to go in and do an RCA to understand how to reduce the risk on this particular event, I could click over into the PROACT RCA program and begin an RCA. At the end of this particular analysis, the fourth button here is the report. It's going to ask you two simple things. What did you conclude as a result of what you found here? And what are your recommendations from this point forward? Am I going to choose to accept these? Am I going to mitigate them? Or am I going to do a root cause analysis on these types of things? I can go ahead and I can put my logo in this. But what the program has been doing all the way through with all of these inputs is that it has been putting in every entry that you've done into a pre-slotted location, so that now your reports are always going to be consistent with everyone that's doing these types of analyses. And also what this means is that you don't have to go out and create a new report or start typing from scratch with all the data that you've been collecting that's in various programs, because it will have been completed already. And as you can tell, this will now show you what all of these are. And you get one nice clean report with all of your information in it. It is a very efficient program for these purposes. Okay, so this would show, this was a demonstration of the FMEA aspects of how to conduct those and what your team leader will be doing with you on the team. They will be facilitating this process and asking you for the input of data. Now let's go into a PROACT RCA, and we'll give a quick example of what happens in the RCA program. As you will see when this converts over, is that the root cause analysis portion here will model the PROACT acronym of the PR, the O, the A, the C, and the T. Now what I'm going to do here is go ahead and I'm going to open up a particular analysis that is dealing with a medication error. It's actually an allergic reaction to cephalosporin. Each line item in here represents a complete RCA. I'm going to select one that obviously I've already completed. I'm going to double click on this, and what we're going to see here, it's now retrieving the logic tree, which is really the core to the RCA in and of itself. But if you look off in here while it's loading, these 5 buttons represent the acronym of PROACT that I went over in the methodology section: the preserve, the order, the analyze, the communicate, and the track. This button here on the bottom represents analysis at a glance. This is so that management can overlook at any point in the progress of the analysis what's the status of the analysis itself. All right, as I said, the first step here is the data collection. We're going to have to use something we call in the training the 5 Ps. These are just data collection categories that represent paper, paradigms, parts, people, and position. So in this particular case, we want to collect the patient medical history. The collection strategy is how we're going to get it. The person responsible, who's going to get it. Date of collection, we want it by. And then I can also in here be able to go in and say that I want to include a file link. And what this file link will do is go out to your browser and say, you know, what do you want to attach to this particular record as part of your evidence collection strategy. At the end of this session, what we will end up with is a list. It's going to be a data collection strategy that's going to outline who has to get what by what time and did they get it. Okay, the order section is simply being able to, you can redefine aspects or modify aspects of your team structure. These are my team members that I selected to be on my team, which would be you all. Critical success factors, which are simple items, line items that say we will be successful if. The team charter is going to be a one-paragraph statement saying why are we together as a team. And the dates and comments will reflect when we plan on starting and when we plan on ending. Okay, the bulk of this analysis will be with you all providing the principal analyst answers to their questions because you possess the experience and the talent. They will start, this will be a clean slate, and they may say that their event is going to be excessive lengths of stay and that they've had a particular allergic reaction. Now their question to you is going to be, how can I have an allergic reaction? And you as team members may come up with, well, either we knew about the allergic condition or we didn't. Now these H's stand for hypotheses. And if I double click on any of these hypotheses, what's going to pop up is this thing called a verification log. And it's going to ask me for the proof that I have that this is either true or not. A 0 means with the proof I have this is not true. A 5 means with the proof that I have that this is true. Okay, once the evidence says something is true, we just keep following what's true. How can I have a med order process error? Well, this should be familiar, is that we can have a medication manufacturing error, a prescribing, transcribing, dispensing, administer, or a monitoring error. We review our data and we find in this case it's a dispensing error. We note that in our verification log. We continue on. How can I have a dispensing error? The doctor prescribed it wrong, or it was the correct prescription but it was dispensed incorrectly. Our evidence says that it was the correct prescription. How can that happen? I have the wrong type of drug dispensed, or it was the correct antibiotic, wrong version. In this case, it's the right antibiotic, wrong version. Well, how can I have the right antibiotic and the wrong version? Simply, the correct version was unavailable. How could the correct version be unavailable? Well, there was a decision to curb the scope of the formulary, or it was a stock out. We can disprove that it was not a stock out, and in this case there was a decision by the pharmacist to curb the scope of the formulary. Now the questioning process with your principal analyst is going to switch from how can to why, because we are at a decision point and we want to understand why this individual made that decision. We find that there was a cost reduction effort in place by the CFO mandating a 10% cutback out of people's budgets. As a result of that pressure, the pharmacist took an action to curb the scope of the formulary. In doing so, he also violated some other policies in place, which were that he did not get input from the other physicians, and there was no quality control check on the formulary design to prevent him from doing that. So what we will do now is be able to show, when we present this logic tree to our managers and to other people who are interested, is that I can now show that from the systemic level that we have these deficiencies in our systems which triggered that decision, which triggered that consequence, and I can now correlate this directly to the impact on the patient. And this is what I was talking about when we talk about cause and effect relationships as opposed to brainstorming. This is dictating with evidence direct cause and effect relationships affecting the patient. This is a very valuable tool that you'll be working on with your teams, and this ability to express it in this fashion is very user-friendly and very effective. Okay, as a result of completing your logic tree, you will now go into the Communicate section, and this is where the report writer is. So there are 3 tabs in this section. One is the summaries, one are the recommendations, and one is the report. The summaries are very simple. It's the event summary, the summary of what we found, and the summary of the process we used to solve it. Now the recommendations represent anything you put a circle on that tree indicating a cause is going to be in this pull down box. Now your principal analyst is going to ask the team members, this is our particular cause, how are we going to overcome it? There are positions down here for executive summaries and also the detailed recommendation for the person who will actually have to execute this. These recommendations will be proposed, approved, in progress, completed, or rejected. And I can also file link right here. For instance, if we have a new procedure that we've written, we can file link it here and include it in the report. Now the report section is going to now allow you to print whatever the table of contents that you want in whatever order that you want. So what this is now going to be able to do is going to pull up all of the fields that have potential for data to be in them. Now you will be able to pick whichever ones you want in the order that you want. Now if I was reporting to JACO, I might simply give them the summaries and the executive summary, and I give them my logic tree and the data that we collected. That's all that I want to give them. So that's all they're going to get. So now I can go in and I can put my logo on the front, and just like with the FMEA report, I can now go ahead and in a very uniform, a very consistent format be able to print this report, publish it into a PDF, and be able to send it to anybody that I want, whether they are on my team or not. So now this report is going to reflect the order that I asked the information to be displayed in. Here's my executive summary. Here's my analyze. There's my tree with the path to failure highlighted. And here's my data collection tables. It's very nice, very tidy. Okay, in my tracking component now it assumes that at this point we've implemented our recommendations, and now we want to track something related to this particular event. As a result of our implemented recommendations, we would want to track whether we've had any other ADEs and the frequency of occurrence. So over maybe a 6-month period, we're going to be able to trend that down, providing that our recommendations are working. Okay, in the end down here is the analysis at a glance. And if we are tracking this from a business standpoint, this is just where all the data is housed for money. This would show us how much we spent on collecting data, how much we spent on, which I don't have any in here, but on proving the hypotheses, money we plan to spend on implementing our recommendations, and then I have our dashboard. This is where the either the management or the principal analyst can come in and say, well, you know, I've issued 19 things to be done and only 6 have been done. I can now go in and print out a list of who owes me what. I can also track my estimated return on investment based on the losses incurred by this event as opposed to the cost of the analysis and the recommendations. This is very helpful when working with your CFOs on being able to justify why we need to go ahead and implement certain recommendations. Okay, what I'm going to do now is close this individual analysis and give you a 1-minute description of what you see on the front of this screen. Is that these things in blue are works in progress. Depending on how your principal analyst wants to handle it and their administrative rights, you may or may not have access to these, but if you are on the team and they give you access, you will be able to go in and update these records based on tasks that you had to do. Now, when this analysis is complete and everyone is ready to publish it, we can now go in, I'll take cephalosporin for example, and say, now me as the team leader can do this. I'm going to publish this. And now this means that anyone who has access to the PROACT program can now go in and look at this particular analysis in a read-only format and see the work that you all have done. This is very helpful from a knowledge management standpoint and a lessons learned, because you may have a sister facility who had a similar incident and wants to see how you all did your analysis, and perhaps they can make a copy of this analysis and capitalize on your logic, saving you from having to do it from scratch all over again and learning from the experience of others. If I want to take this off of the market, if you will, and make some changes, then me as the leader can unpublish that. So as you can tell, this is likely a little bit more disciplined than approaches in the past, but it is a very disciplined approach based on fact. You will be asked to participate on these teams because of your knowledge and experience in the field and your ability to come up with hypotheses and provide data to help prove or disprove them. This is going to conclude the software demo portion, as which you will be able to see it live when you do participate on these teams, and hopefully you understand now why this was going to be a prerequisite to being on the team, because it gives you a little bit more now knowledge of what to expect. Because if you sometimes if you just go in there and you don't know where it's going to end, you don't understand the steps, and you get bored and you think it's the same old, hopefully you can see how the pieces of the puzzle fit together here and where the end of the tunnel is. So with that, I would like to thank you for your time. I do appreciate your patience, and I think that you will find these types of sessions to be much more productive and educational for you because of the disciplined nature of it and the cause and effect related structure of the analyses. Again, you have the names and the numbers. We wish you the best, and your principal analyst likely knows our home phone numbers, so if you have any issues, please let them know and they will get back with us. We wish you the best of luck and look forward to hearing great things from you all. Regards.